Hello, and thank you for joining our session of Yoga Core. As always, just take a moment to look around and make sure that you are in a safe space. So there's no cords or slippery objects. I like to trip over books. So make sure that you have books picked up and you're in a safe space. We're going to start either in a comfortable seated shape. If you have tight hips, tight low back, you can always sit up on a blanket or a block, or you can lie on your back. I'm a big fan of starting on my back because it helps me feel my back body a little more and just feel that connection to my spine and my muscles in the back body. We're all really different though. So if you feel you want to start like crisscross applesauce sitting, great. You can start by lying back as well with your knees bent. Shoulders, head, hips, and feet nice and grounded. So as you find and feel out your comfortable supportive shape, just give yourself some time. It's a gentle reminder here for all of us that we all have agency over our bodies and our practices. So as we're practicing, working through this class together, if something doesn't feel comfortable or safe for you, please, please, please know you don't have to do it. Okay, you can take a break anytime you need to, you want to. Taking breaks is a wonderful way to take care of ourselves. Okay, so please do what you want, what you need, what's best for you. So with that said, let's settle. Slowing the physical body down for a little bit. You might find it helpful to feel the steadiness of the ground beneath you. Trusting that the ground will hold you up. Just letting your body feel that support. Breathing in and out through your nose. Trying to let your body breathe for you. You might be someone who stores a lot of tension up in your face and your jaw and your neck and your chest. If you feel that is where you hold a lot of stress, take a couple moments and try and let your eyes soften. Let your tongue relax. Maybe try and just let your neck feel a little longer, your head a little heavier. And then as we're paying attention, feeling, noticing our body's breathing, let's try and soften the breath in the chest. So if you tend to be someone who has a lot of breath and movement in your chest, it's noticing that's you. Trying to quiet the chest down a little bit. So you could still feel the breath in your chest, but there might not be as much rise and fall. Might feel a little more calm and easeful across the armpits, across the collarbones, the very tip tops of the ribs and the lungs. And then guiding your attention down into your navel area, out into your hips. So the mechanics of breathing here in relationship to your rib cage. We'll start with an exhale. So as we exhale, these lower ribs drawing down and in, you might feel your navel relax or draw down. That might make your abdominals feel like they're getting a hug. And then we inhale. The front ribs expand and the belly lifts, the navel lifts. Might even feel some residue of the breath out in your pelvic crest or in the front of your hips. When you get around to your exhale again, those ribs draw down and in. The navel draws down. Might feel the abdominals, almost like you're getting a deep hug. And then you inhale again. Taking a couple breaths here. And then putting those pieces together. So relaxing in the eyes and the face, and the jaw and the neck. Quiet breathing in your chest. The feeling of the breath down in your lower ribs, behind your navel, maybe even out into your hips. Let's try 5 breaths. So as you exhale, navel naturally gravitating towards your spine. And that's different than forcing it or tightening it up or squeezing it, okay? So we want to just try and feel, and it's pretty subtle for some of us when you exhale navel to spine. And that's going to help support your lower lumbar stability. And that's going to become more and more important, especially as you bring your knees up over your hips. So let's bring your knees up over your hips. Try and feel your knee a little more stacked over your hip. If you bring your knee way in, you might start to feel your low belly or your belly button push into the floor, and that's tipping your pelvis, you're tucking your tailbone. Now, if you bring your knees forward, back over your hips, and then you take your knees forward, you might pop your lower back and your ribs way up. That's not so great on your spine. Mine's starting to cramp up, and I come back to neutral. So nice and slow, doing these 2 movements on your own, just to feel the difference between tucking your tailbone like this, neutral, that's when your low back has that sweet little S curve. The back of the ribs are down on the floor, sweet little neck curve. When your knees go forward, I lose it pretty quick. My lower lumbar gets a lot bigger and my ribs pop up, okay? So we're going to come back, each one of us, take our time, find that neutral, knees over hips, toes up towards the ceiling. We're going to put our hands on our thigh bones. Elbows are going to wing out just a little bit up off of the floor. And I'm going to start to push my legs away and pull my legs in at the same time, okay? See what that does for you. When I start to pull my legs in and push with some effort, automatically, I pretty much connect navel to spine a little more. I can feel this lower abdominal connection pretty quick. Trying to maintain that long lumbar spine. Push, 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 pull, pull, pull. And then point your toes. Push, 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 pull, 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 and then relax and let your feet come down. Just reorganize, which really means shake it out a little bit, feel your body. We'll take a 3-breath break. And just rest for 3 breaths. So nice and weighted through your head. Back of the shoulders drawing towards the floor, not forced, just gravity's pulling them down. Might feel the back of the ribs, nice and wide. Little lumbar curve, back of the hips. One more time. Bring your knees up. If you need to feel knees coming in, knees pushing away to help you define your neutral back, do that. Neutral spine, pelvis, nice and anchored, right side to left side. You could choose, if you want your hands on the top of your thigh bones, do that. Maybe you want to change it up and put them on your hamstrings. We're still going to push and pull. So you can have your toes up the first time, push your legs away, pull your legs in with some energy. See if you can still feel that navel to low back connection. Then point your toes. And then straighten and bend your legs 5 times. Nice and slow, like you were in water, where you're trying to move with a little bit of resistance. Your hands could be on the front of your legs or the back, trying to keep your pelvis right where it is with your spine in neutral, okay? It's gonna be really easy for some of us to straighten the legs and round into that low back like this. Okay, we're gonna try and resist that, keeping that low neutral lumbar curve. 2 more. When your legs are a little straighter than bent, we're gonna take a hamstring stretch. So you can have your toes pointed. You could push your heels away, flex. You could do a little bit of both. You could keep your hands on the front of your thigh bones. You could hold on to the back. Let's take 3 breaths. And then just let your feet pause. Keep your legs up, let your arms come down. Notice where you might be tight. I really noticed I was trying to hold my legs from my chest. My chest just got super tight. My throat got really tight. So I'm someone who likes to try and hold things up from my neck and my jaw. So if you're someone similar, check in. Come back, see if you can then return to the feeling of the ribs and then the abdominals. Soften where you can soften, strengthen the awareness where you can find more awareness in that core strength area. And then bring your arms up towards the ceiling. So back of the hips, back of the shoulders, arms nice and heavy. We're going to take all the limbs out and then bring all the limbs in 2 more times. So head, shoulders, and hips, rounding down. Back of the head, back of the shoulders, back of the hips. How steady can you be through the back of the head, the back of the shoulders, and the hips as you come back up, all the limbs up? Now contralateral. Left leg, right arm. Try not to wobble and come back. 2 more on the same side, just to help define not wobbling. So back left shoulder, back right hip, super grounded. You might notice how that right hip wants to pop up off of the ground. Left arm, right leg 3 times. So that stable arm and leg connecting into a really stable shoulder and hip socket. So the limbs that aren't moving, helping ground you, then going side to side. So it's really easy for us to pay attention right away to what we're moving. Can you pay attention to what's stable and go side to side a couple more times? Then, when you've done a couple each side, keep going or take a break. Ooh. Eventually, after a couple more of those, we'll all bring our feet and arms down to the floor and rest for 5 breaths. So when you're ready, just bring everything down to the floor. Give yourself 5 breaths to rest. And when you're resting, it might be helpful to check in, ask yourself how you're feeling physically, energetically. What do you need from your practice here? And then with your second exhale, we're going to roll over to our tabletop. So we'll build a nice strong table. So this is your foundation. So take some time to build a really strong foundation. Sometimes it's easy to just move really fast through these transitions and not pay attention to all of the important stability pieces. So hands nice and spread, fingers nice and strong, forearms nice and strong. And just to shake things up and do it a little differently than we have through the other classes, we're going to step our knees back a little bit. And we're going to try and bend our elbows and come down to a forearm table, okay? We do a lot of straight arm tables, and coming down onto our forearms is going to wake up some new feeling in some different muscles, and it's also going to help all of our friends who have wrist issues, okay? So when you get down onto your forearms, look out, strong hands. Press your forearms down, really grounding the forearm. And then your arm bone in your shoulder socket here is going to drop back, okay? So this arm bone is going to drop back into the socket. And like we talk about every week, try to resist gravity in your spine. So try not to make a big U shape. Ooh. You might feel that through that exhale, ribs, abdominals, navel drawing up a little bit. Again, it's not like a squeeze, cut off energy. I'm trying to put on super tight pants squeeze. We're all going to feel it and understand it in our own language. So give yourself some time to feel it in your own language. As you build your elbow table, see where you feel your breathing for 3 breaths. And then from here, we're going to work a little bit like a pointer dog, taking your right leg straight back, pause, trying to keep your hips level, bring your right knee back in, step your left foot back, left hip, right hip, are they level? And then we're just going to go back and forth, right side to left side, moving at your own pace. Okay, again, we're trying not to wobble a lot side to side, not have a lot of rotation. How steady can we feel front to back, side to side? If you want more challenge, feel free to float the foot back, keeping it off of the floor and just pushing and pulling it a few times. Okay, you can do 2 or 3 on each side, or you could keep going side to side. We'll be here for maybe 5 to 8 more breaths. Gentle reminder, the longer you stay in a shape working, the easier it is to fall back into some of those postural habits, like dropping your ribs and finding that U in your spine or sticking your butt way out. So back to that table as you're working. Then we'll slow it way down. Then we'll take a fork in the road. If you want to try an elbow dog, you keep your forearms down, really strong through forearms, strong through the upper back. You might feel that through this back shoulder piece. Ribs are knit, Rib abdominal connection, float your knees up and working on straightening your legs. You can practice this. If that gets to be too much in the shoulder and the tricep, good old-fashioned downward facing dog. If that gets to be too much, tabletop, maybe child's pose. I know that child's pose isn't for everyone. You can roll onto your side. That takes the weight off of the knees. We're gonna find one of these shapes for 5 breaths. So coming back into your own body, feeling, noticing. When you feel the next 2 exhales, really recognize it. Ah, there's my exhale. And then whatever shape you're in, we're gonna walk feet to hands. If you're on the ground, you're gonna have to roll on up and come feet to hands, but slowly come all the way on up. We'll just take it really slow and slowly come all the way on up to standing. Then when you get up to standing, just take a moment, recognize, oh, hey, I'm standing. Notice what that feels like. And then 2 breaths. We'll step your feet wide into sumo. So sumo's a really nice way for us to start our standing shapes because it works the ankles, the knees, and the hips. Okay, it works on getting some flexion, warming up ankles and knees especially. So trying to keep an awareness of the heels to the balls of your feet. Trying to keep equal-ish weight, going up and down a few times. Look out, see that your knees are tracking over your toes. It'll be more challenging if you want that to have your knees going over your middle toes, okay? And probably the most challenging part is that you're moving from your breath. You're paying attention to how you're feeling as you're going up and down. You're practicing with kindness and curiosity. Great, last one. Great, then I'm just gonna point the toes or the feet forward. Now, oftentimes when this happens, when the feet turn forward, we kind of collapse in like this on our knees. So notice if you did something similar. Nothing wrong with it. We're just gonna, for this exercise, push out. So middle of the thigh bone's gonna push out. Weight, pinky toe to heel, see if you can feel that along with your big toes grounding. And then back to your navel to back connection. Your ribs to abdominal connection. Your arms into your upper back. Okay, let's take a couple breaths. Great. So taking your arms out and up. I'm going to bend and bring the arms down and in. Okay. If this is really tight for you in your knees and your hips with your feet a little more forward, take your toes out, okay? So you can practice with your toes a little more forward. For some of us, that might not feel super great in the front of the hip. And for others of us, that might not feel super great back here in the SI joint. So it's a really nice way for us to understand external leg rotation in the hip socket, okay? So if your toes are still facing forward and you're going up and down and you're feeling a little pinch in your low back, rotate those thigh bones out, toes out, heels in. We'll go up and down 3 more times. Great, last one. I'm going to step both feet together. I'm going to go sideways so you can see where we're headed. So in this series, or in this class, we talk over and over again about ears and shoulders and ribs and hips, just in our awareness. They don't have to be perfectly stacked over each other, but we also don't want the head really far forward. We also don't want the hips way forward, right, or way back. So one way we can recognize our own midline is the ears, the shoulders, the ribs, the hips. Another way is nose, sternum, belly button, pubic bone. Okay, so standing sideways, I'm going to show you, we're going to put our hands up here in the hip creases, little bend in our knees. We're going to start to tip over. So as you move from your hips forward, can you keep your hips, your ribs, your shoulders, and your ears more in a line? Maybe you feel this a little more. Nose, chin, sternum, belly button. Each one of us is really different. So how you feel this in your own body is how you understand this. I'm going to go just slow enough and do 2 more that you're moving for understanding. The second time you tip over, we're going to pause. Now, some of us might just tip like a little tiny bit, a few inches. Okay, so you might just be coming forward this much. That's okay. Others of us might bend the knees a little bit or a whole lot, free up some hamstrings and tip over further, 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 further. Okay, find just the right like projected stance for you. And then remember all that time we spent on the floor doing tabletop, using that awareness here, okay? So you're gonna resist gravity, navel to low back awareness, ribs to abdominals, arm bones back, upper back strong. Maybe tuck your chin a little bit to look down. For most of us, it's gonna feel better if the weight is in the heels. 3 breaths. Next exhale, fold forward. Resist folding forward. Try not to fall forward. Bend your knees as much as you need. As always, check in that you're not overstraining your low back. With your exhale, walk your hands and feet out to downward facing dog. If you want more challenge, lower down to your knees and take floating table. If you want less challenge, find your version of child's pose. So that might be rounding all the way back or rolling onto your side. So side child's, normal, kind of what we consider child's pose. Maybe you're still in your plank pose. Maybe you're in downward facing dog pose, okay? Take 5 more breaths. Coming out of plank doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're taking care of yourself. So if you need to come out of plank, come out of plank. Great, then we're all gonna come back to our tabletop. Give ourselves a couple breaths to come to table. Either walk your hands forward a little bit or your knees back. Try and get your elbows back down to your elbow table. Either staying in your elbow table, maybe floating elbow table, or an elbow downward facing dog. 3 breaths. Strong legs, even here, rib to abdominal connection, navel to spine connection, strong upper back. With your exhale, we come back to tabletop. Take a couple breaths and figure out how to come all the way back on up to standing. Find standing mountain. And using Sandy Mountain to just come back and anchor into our bodies. So give yourself a couple moments, a couple breaths. Notice your present time experience. Reminding yourself, oh, I can stay grounded with a fast heartbeat. I can stay grounded with fast breath. All right, so a little bend in your knees again. So mindful we're not walking your knees. Get a little bend. Coming back, tipping over. Remember that idea of midline. So as you tip over and come back up 3 times, you're moving first from your pelvis, but you're trying to keep hips, ribs, shoulders, head. 3rd time you tip, you're going to find just the right place for you. Check that you're not over rounding forward. So one way to check that is to take your arms out in front of you, draw them back. It's going to help open up through the chest. To take your lower ribs with your exhale, draw the ribs back, navel to spine. Good. More challenging shoulder stretch, stretching the arms up without pushing the rib cage forward. Okay, so your shoulder stretching with your arms up. If you have your fingertips at your chest or your hands on your hips, we're all trying to find that rib to abdominal connection, navel to spine, upper back strength. 2 more breaths. And you're going to shift the weight over, lift your left heel, step your left foot back. Build your lunge, okay? So your spine nice, long, hips, nice and strong. So to help you feel a little more strength in the hip, you might imagine you're squeezing your legs in like if you were on ice, and you're squeezing your legs front to back, okay? So this front leg is drawing back, back leg's drawing forward. Then we're just gonna lift up and tip forward 3 times. So legs stay in that same super strong shape. Feel your strength as you tip. You come up. Try to lead from your hips, not your neck, not your face. Good. Next time you come up, we're gonna pause. Build your high lunge. So hips, stack under ribs, under shoulders, under ears. Rib abdominal connection, navel to spine, upper back, shoulder stretch. If you want, taking your arms up. A little more challenging, you can start to bend and straighten that back left knee, coming up and down 3 to 5 times. You can pause and hold the shape like this, or you can pulse up and down a few times. Resist moving the rib cage and the spine. If your hips are tight, it's going to be easy to push your ribs forward. After 3 to 5, pause. Hands come together. You're going to fold all the way forward, plant your hands out in front of your foot, and step back, downward facing dog. If you want something a little less intense than down dog, bend your knees, find your version of child's pose. Remember, your version might be coming back like we're used to. Your version might be rolling over onto your side. 5 breaths. Downward facing dog, child's pose, or side child's. It's okay to have a fast breath. And you honor and stay grounded with the fast breath, with the fast heartbeat. There's no need to try and control and try and slow your breath down here. It'll just naturally do that when it's ready. And taking 2 more breaths. You have to figure out how to come all the way back on up to standing. So give yourself a moment, figure it out. Each one of us comes back to standing in our own unique way. And we take a couple breaths. Feeling nice and grounded again, or at least going for that. Let's set that intention that we want to feel grounded and anchor to the stability of the ground a little more. Soft bend in your knees. Ribs to abdominals, navel to spine, upper back, bend the knees. Tip forward a little bit. So it's almost like a shallow chair pose. We worked on this before, I think. So shallow chair. Then you're gonna lift your right heel, step it back, and build the lunge. Legs stay the same, but we're gonna concentrate on feeling strength through the hips. So you can squeeze your legs in, squeeze the legs front to back, navel to spine, ribs, abdominals, upper back. Tipping, coming up 3 times. Back right leg really strong. Try not to push your left hip out. Try to keep your left hip back and in. Then you're going to come up and build that high lunge. Working at your own pace. No need to hurry, understanding, feeling as you go through the shapes. You can hang out in this shape. You could start to bend and straighten your back right leg. As you're moving, maybe you need to pause, come back to your midline, understanding ears, shoulders, ribs, and hips. Hands can come to your chest or on your hips if you need. Build your high lunge when you're ready. Lengthen through the spine. Fold forward with strength. Try not to fall forward. And then when you're ready, downward facing dog. Child's pose or side child's, 5 breaths. I'll be quiet. You can listen and hear your body breathe. With your next exhale, walking your hands and feet together. So if you're in child or side child, starting to make your way all the way back on up to standing. Take a full stretch. And exhale. Okay, walk to the back of your mat. And pause. 3 breaths. With your exhale, arms float out to come up. Bend your knees a little bit, resist folding forward, meaning not just gonna fall over. It's nice and controlled. We're connected and strong all the way up and over. When you're ready, bend your knees, check in with your low back, lift your chest. One more time, downward facing dog. Just take 1 inhale. We're all going to come down and build tabletop. Walk your hands out in front of you. When you get to your table, we're going to resist moving your spine. It's going to move, but we're going to just practice resisting, trying to understand and feel. So as we pull forward, we're going to resist that piece of extension as long as we can. Okay, so as you pull forward, your shoulders come forward of your wrists, resisting the ribs falling to the floor. But go ahead, let the pubic bone, let your pelvis come forward. Feel that strength through your low belly, like navel to pubic bone and through your low back. Lift your chest, so sternum lifts up. Ground, super strong fingers and forearms. And then we push back. We find our table and then we resist that rounding as long as we can. Sure, it's going to happen, but we resist it. We don't just flippantly, without mindfulness, go into that place of flexion. 2 more. We're going to pull ourselves to table, adding a little more speed for fluidity as the shoulders come over the wrists. Really nice and strong, resisting the ribs just falling to the ground. Nice, lifted through the chest. Super strong as you go back. Recognize when you're in table. Push back, resist your cat. Resist that child's pose feeling. Good, and then one more time. Come forward to table, pull yourself forward. Press back. Land in child's pose or roll onto your side and take 5 breaths. So if child's pose is too much on your knees, roll onto your side and scoop your knees way up into your chest. 3 more breaths. When you feel your next exhale, slowly roll over onto your back. Bring your feet back to the floor. Knees are bent, arms to your side. And then just nice and slow here, pressing into your feet. Just tipping and tucking through the pelvis and the low back. So I'm going to take your belly button and push your belly button down. And feel your pelvis. And then find your pubic bone and push your pubic bone. Feel your pelvis and your spine. And you might push your belly button down and feel that all the way, not only in your tailbone, but all the way through your spine. You might slowly roll up into a really low bridge and roll back down. 3 or 4 more. Going slow and fluid. So slow with fluidity and control. Notice if you're holding tension again in your chest, in your face. And then we'll slow it way down, come back to constructive rest pose. When you were doing those bridges or those little rolls, if you noticed you were holding a lot of tension in the chest, in the throat, in the face when we checked in, give yourself a moment to soften it. Just really setting some awareness and intention to letting go in the eyes and the face and the tongue and the chest. We're going to take the last few minutes here on our backs to rest, to reconnect to our breathing. So feeling again one more time, you have agency. So doing what you need to do here. Take a few moments to feel the stability of the ground. We'll take the last minute here in silence. Just gently coming back to your breath, noticing an inhale, noticing your exhale. If you're feeling grounded, you're feeling supported, you might take a couple longer exhales. Just noticing the feeling of your body breathing for you. And if you're ready, adding some very gentle, easy movement. That might be wiggling your fingers and your toes. Might be drawing your knees up into your chest, stretching out your low back, rocking a little bit side to side. You might want to take a full body stretch. Seeing here as you're moving, paying attention, that practice of embodiment, being a part of your body, moving, feeling, practicing, being with your breath, with kindness, with curiosity, taking care of ourselves. And then as you're ready, just slowly rolling over to the easiest side. And then slowly coming all the way on up to sitting.